Ted Bundy was a serial killer who murdered at least 30 young women and girls across 7 states in the 1970s. He was known for his charm and good looks, which he used to lure his victims into his car before attacking them. Bundy's murders were particularly gruesome. He often bludgeoned his victims with a blunt object, then sexually assaulted them and sometimes even decapitated them. He was known for returning to the scenes of his crimes to engage in necrophilia with his victims' corpses. Bundy's killing spree came to an end when he was finally arrested in 1978. He was convicted and sentenced to death for 3 of his murders in Florida, but he remained unrepentant until the very end. He was executed in the electric chair on January 24, 1989. Despite the passage of time, Ted Bundy remains one of the most notorious and reviled killers in American history. His case has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and even a Hollywood movie. The exact reasons why Ted Bundy committed his heinous crimes are not fully understood and are still subject to debate among psychologists and criminologists. Some theories suggest that Bundy's traumatic childhood and upbringing, including his belief that his mother was his older sister and the absence of his biological father, contributed to his development of a distorted view of sexuality and relationships with women. Others have pointed to Bundy's narcissistic and sociopathic personality traits, including his grandiosity, lack of empathy, and manipulativeness, as factors that may have contributed to his ability to carry out his crimes. Despite extensive analysis of his case, Bundy never fully disclosed his motivations for his murders. He denied committing some of them and gave conflicting accounts of others, making it difficult to fully understand his mindset at the time of his crimes. Some have suggested that he may have enjoyed the sense of power and control he gained from taking the lives of his victims. Ultimately, the reasons for Bundy's actions may never be fully known, and his case continues to fascinate and horrify people to this day. We can provide information about various killers throughout history, but please keep in mind that discussing such topics can be disturbing to some individuals. It's important to approach these discussions with sensitivity and respect for the victims and their families. With that said, here is some information about other notorious killers. Jeffrey Dahmer. Dahmer was a serial killer and cannibal who murdered at least 17 young men and boys between 1978 and 1991. He was known for luring his victims into his apartment, where he would drug and then strangle them. He then engaged in acts of necrophilia, dismemberment, and cannibalism with their remains. Dahmer was arrested in 1991 and later died in prison after being beaten by another inmate. John Wayne Gacy. Gacy, also known as the Killer Clown, was a serial killer who raped and murdered at least 33 young men and boys between 1972 and 1978. He was known for dressing up as a clown and performing at children's parties. He lured his victims into his home, where he would sexually assault and then strangle them. Gacy was arrested in 1978 and later executed by lethal injection in 1994. Charles Manson. Manson was a cult leader who orchestrated a series of murders in 1969. His followers, known as the Manson family, carried out a string of killings in the Los Angeles area, including the murder of actress Sharon Tate and several others. Manson was known for his manipulation and control over his followers, as well as his strange and twisted beliefs about race and society. Manson died in prison in 2017. Aileen Wuornos. Wuornos was a serial killer who murdered at least 7 men in Florida between 1989 and 1990. She claimed that her victims had sexually assaulted her or attempted to rape her, and she killed them in self-defense. Wuornos was later found guilty of the murders and was executed by lethal injection in 2002. Ed Gein. Gein was a serial killer and grave robber who lived in Wisconsin in the 1950s. He was known for exhuming corpses from local graveyards and using their body parts to make household items and clothing. He also killed 2 women and used their body parts to decorate his home. Gein was later found not guilty by reason of insanity and spent the rest of his life in a mental institution. These are just a few examples of some of the most notorious killers in history. It's important to remember that these individuals committed heinous crimes and that discussing their actions should be done with sensitivity and respect for the victims and their families.